So, well, hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Siafra. You may have met me at one of these other Finance on Fridays. I'm one of the advisors here at Women's Wealth, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by Grant Parker, who is a partner from Mayo Wynne Baxter, who's an expert in family law and has been a real advocate for women in all of the work that he's done through the years. So before we get cracking on to the topic of today, maybe Grant, can you just give us a little bit more information about your background?
Sure, thanks, Siafra. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Grant Parker. I'm partner and head of the family team at Mayo Wynne Baxter, which is a Sussex-based law firm. I practice exclusively in family law. I qualified as a barrister and solicitor of the High Court of New Zealand in 1994. And I was admitted as a solicitor in England and Wales in 2003. My specialisms really are in advising and representing clients in cases involving finance claims upon divorce, normally high value claims, pension claims. But I also do a lot of work in relation to domestic violence cases, acting for victims of domestic violence, putting in place protective orders. And also do a lot of work involving disputes involving children. So family law is my specialty, and I'm going to be giving you some information about divorce and finance claims today.
So great, thank you very much, Grant. So just a reminder for everybody, Finance on Friday is a Women's Wealth broadcast where we spend just half an hour talking through some of the latest information and views on topics that matter to our members. As Grant's already spoken, so today's topic is all about getting through the legal and financial aspects of divorce. It's one of those things in life that is really challenging, and we want to give everyone here a safe space to answer any questions that you have. If you feel brave enough, maybe put in the chat where you're joining from us today. It would be lovely to see where you're all joining from, because certainly some of the legal and financial aspects can be different depending on where you're joining us from in the UK. But our plan very much today is to try and keep the presentation side of things as light as possible, to give you as much possible as much of a chance to ask all of those questions to our expert that we have here today. So we have got 30 minutes planned for the session today. But if we have a few more questions, I think myself and Grant are available to run over a little bit. So as I said, start thinking about maybe those questions for now. But Grant, would you mind giving us a quick overview of what we're planning to cover in a bit more detail? And then I'll let you get cracking in terms of taking us through a little bit about the process, the legal process.
Sure, Siafra. Do you want to put up the slide if you can?
Yeah, I'm going to do that now. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So I hope everyone can see that slide. So as the title says, I'm going to give everyone a very whistle-stop tour of the legal landscape of divorce finances. And I'm going to do that by talking about, first of all, the divorce process itself, and then talking about the main part of the divorce. So Siafra, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So as some of you may know, the divorce process in England and Wales is now an entirely online application process. You can see from this slide at the top there that I've put the government.uk website address. So if you want to start a divorce, you simply go to that website and you upload a copy of your marriage certificate and pay the court fee, which is currently £612. Unless you're fee exempt or you qualify for a reduced fee. And you can make an application as a sole applicant, or you can apply jointly with your spouse. There's no real difference between the two, but there can be some technical legal points that you need to consider if there are pensions in your case. Sometimes you need to be able to control the timing of applying for the final order. So I would recommend that before you start a divorce, and decide on whether you're applying as a sole or a joint applicant, that you do take some legal advice. So you upload your marriage certificate, you pay the fee, and then you start the divorce. So tick box exercise online. And then if you're the sole applicant, your spouse will receive an email from the court saying that you've started a divorce, and they have 14 days to respond to that. You can only defend a divorce now in very, very limited circumstances, normally involving validity issues or jurisdiction issues. So gone are the days where you could defend a divorce because it's a non-fault process now. You don't need to establish adultery or unreasonable behaviour anymore. It's a much more straightforward process. So once you've started the divorce, you go into what's called a cooling off period, which takes 20 weeks. And at the end of that, you can apply for the conditional order. And then 6 weeks later, you apply for the final order. And that's the order that legally ends the marriage. It's generally a good idea to wait until financial issues are resolved before you apply for the final order. And the overall time frame from beginning the application to final order takes about 26 to 28 weeks. Can I have the next slide, please, Siafra?
Yeah.
Once you've started the divorce, you then need to think about your financial claims on divorce. They are very separate from the divorce process. And the starting point is a 50-50 division of matrimonial property. However, in most cases, and in fact, virtually every case that I deal with, there are factors which means that the division of matrimonial property is not equal. Before you start talking about a financial settlement with your spouse, it's really, really important that you get some financial disclosure from the other person. And the best way of doing that is to use what's called a Form E. And you'll see on this slide what that looks like. That's the first page of the Form E document. You can access that document online. And if you go and see a lawyer, that's what they will be saying to you, you need to use. It's really important that you don't start talking about a settlement before you enter into discussions around disclosure. And you'll see on this slide that I've said caution is required if you're doing it yourself, or if you're doing mediation, always best to take some legal advice along the way. Next slide, please.
Nope.
So once you've started the divorce, and then you've started thinking about disclosure, you then need to think about what sort of settlement might be appropriate in your case. The first consideration will be the welfare of any children under the age of 18, and also what is really, really important is financial needs. And financial needs are obviously relevant to who has the children in their care, because obviously the person who has the children in their care generally has greater financial needs than the other person if those children are under the age of 18. Sometimes, if there is a dispute about where the children live, you need to resolve that first before you then move on to think about a financial settlement. But once those issues are clearer, and once you've been through financial disclosure, then you can start thinking about what sort of settlement would be appropriate for you. Next slide, please. So when thinking about a financial settlement, the court or your lawyer will be looking at Section 25 of the Matrimonial Causes Act, and I've put that on the slide. You can have a look at that section yourself online, and I would encourage you to Google that and have a read of it. It's a very easy section to read, and that sets out all of the factors that would be taken into account in a financial settlement. And those factors, as I say, are listed on the slide. And the court or your lawyers will discuss those with you to think about how they feed into a financial settlement in your case. Next slide, please. So once you've the Section 5 factors and you've reached a financial settlement, you then think about the orders that can be made under the Matrimonial Causes Act. And I've listed the 4 main orders on this slide, which are property adjustment orders, lump sum order, pension sharing and spousal maintenance. Property adjustment order is where the court orders property to be transferred from one party to the other, or joint names to one party. Lump sum is obviously where the court orders one person to pay another person a sum of money. Pension sharing is where you share the pensions, and spousal maintenance is where one spouse makes ongoing financial support to the other person, normally by way of monthly payments. The court can also make orders in relation to child maintenance, but most of the time those claims are dealt with by the Child Maintenance Service. So that is a very, very whistle-stop tour of the divorce process online and the financial claims aspect. I've given you very general information about both processes, but I hope that that's helpful for now, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on your situations. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Grant. So I'm just going to, before we sort of jump into this question area, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview on, again, how a financial advisor can help with the divorce process. So just give me 2 seconds again while I just get 1 or 2 slides up for you guys all. And then we're going to get straight into questions, which hopefully you guys have got lots of ones. If you do start sticking them in the chat, as I said, that would be absolutely great and everything. So just 2 seconds, right? Why can't I see share now? 2 seconds.
I do have a quick question for you, Grant, just because I've seen that some people have joined from Scotland. Is it a different process, different website, different kind of what the...
Yeah, it is. I don't know anything about financial claims upon divorce in Scotland. It's a different jurisdiction, so I wouldn't be able to answer any questions from anyone in Scotland, sorry.
Yeah, I think there is definitely different treatment sometimes on pensions, and also I think like values of houses and everything. I think whereas in the UK, as you said, that 50-50 would cover all of marriage, but I think a little bit in Scotland, it's more sometimes I think for the period that they're married. But exactly, I think
it's quite different, Siafra, yes. And so the information I've given regarding the divorce process and financial claims is in England and Wales, not Scotland.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me just talk a little bit about where financial planning can help in the process. As Grant sort of mentioned, the first thing you're going to be doing is asked to do this e-form where you need to make financial disclosures. So I think we can help in the process sort of before, during and after, and in the process if you're having to go through, unfortunately, going through this situation. So right at the start, we can help with collecting that information. Again, we see again as we onboard ourselves, our new clients ourselves, that often clients come to us and they don't really understand all of their financial assets. And we obviously, as they join us, we often do a lot of helping with them in terms of how to collect all of that information and explaining what all of that information means, statements and things like that. We sort of go through all sorts of things. So I think we can certainly help with that. We can also help with some scenario planning. So do you want to keep the house? Do you want to take the pension? Do you want to, what are all the aspects? How much can you afford? Can you even afford the legal costs associated with divorce? How much kind of money do you need to live? So I think just knowing your numbers, I think, is a really, really good place to start. And as I said, so we can certainly help at that stage. During the process, we can help you again structure different proposals. So again, if you're having to think about the pension, so or maybe perhaps a lump sum or offsetting a pension or something like that. And again, we can help you go through what are the implications of some of those things. And we use cash flow modeling to really help visualize what your finances are going to look like in these different scenarios. And then finally, obviously, once the process has been done, we're obviously here to rebuild. So help you rebuild, but also, look at also maybe the transfer, the impact of tax on any transfers that might be taking place. And obviously really trying to help you sort of build, a long-term secure plan again. So at different points, I think it'll look differently about how the kind of help that we can give. But I just wanted to sort of highlight one of how that works with the process. So in terms of all of there are many, many financial considerations that we need to consider. and that we do find clients sometimes sort of, don't think about. So we can just run through some of these. Security of your home. I mean, obviously, if you have children and feeling secure, and obviously, that's very, very important. But also we need to make sure that you can afford the home if that's something that's important for you ongoing. So again, those are the sort of things that we would look at. If you are offsetting, which kind of a lot of people do, maybe give up a pension in return for a lump sum. Again, how are you going to pay for your retirement? If this lump sum has got to last you for the rest of your life, it's really important that we consider how we're going to keep you, keep you living in a comfortable position for the rest of your life. So we'll review things like your pension and how you're going to support yourself in retirement. So we'll certainly look at child maintenance and also ongoing costs. So again, making sure that you're really clear about the expenses. I think the court often just considers children up until about the age of 18. They don't often think about further education, or again, sometimes we're supporting even adult kids after that. So what we will do is kind of help you think about some of the further conversations that you want to have with your spouse, maybe as part of proceedings. We want to make sure that you've got the balance right of illiquid. So again, a house generally is an illiquid asset. So it means you don't have access to that money, even though it's worth a lot of money. What you're going to need is access to liquid money. And so that's a very important decision around whether you should keep the house or not take the house. So again, we look at tax. We will look at your lifestyle. Can you afford to, if you were not working, can you afford to continue not working? Will you need to go back to work? So we'll look at all of those sort of things to understand what your lifestyle could look like with your expenses. And then obviously, if you do have money and you need to now start investing for yourself, we are there to help people take those steps. And obviously that's something that we feel very comfortable with understanding. So kind of helping people through all of these quite complex, difficult things, but we take it step by step by people. And we've got a good history here. I've been able to help people certainly that have gone through divorce in the past. So why is it important? First of all, you're going to negotiate from a much stronger position. Certainly reduce conflict and delay by knowing all of your numbers. What we definitely want you to do is not make decisions that you're going to regret later. So we don't want you buying properties or going into investments and things like that, which maybe are not the right thing long term. And certainly, hopefully, by knowing the numbers and everything, it will give you more confidence to either to accept proposals or reject them. So hopefully that should also help from that perspective. So just wanted to give you a little bit of overview about how you can think about using financial planning through divorce process. But yeah, I think for now, I think what we want to do is hand over to you guys and see if you've got any questions. So I haven't managed to see the chat while I was just presenting there, but let me just have a look. Have we got any questions, or is anyone's brave enough to come online? Oh, here I've got questions. Goodness me. I've got married in a registry office in Nigeria. I'm assuming the person's living in the UK. Do the same principles apply as long as you're based in England and Wales?
Yeah, as long as it's a valid marriage, then if you were married abroad but you're living here, then you come within the jurisdiction of England and Wales. So you can apply for a divorce here, and your financial claims will be dealt with in this jurisdiction.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think it was Miss IJ, I think so was that one. We've got another question here from somebody's calling himself M. How does domestic abuse affect this financial settlement? That's a really important, and thank you for asking such a difficult question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The answer is probably difficult to give without knowing the precise circumstances of your situation. In relation to whether your financial settlement will be impacted upon by domestic abuse, it can have a bearing on that, depending on how serious the domestic abuse is. For example, if the other party is in jail as a result, then that will possibly have a bearing on the financial settlement. If it is just domestic abuse that is ongoing or has happened during the marriage, then that may mean that your financial needs are different as a result, because it may be that you've had to leave the family home, you might have to go into rental accommodation, you might have the children with you. So I think domestic abuse does have a bearing on a financial settlement, because obviously it will make your needs different. But as far as whether you would be entitled to more money at the end of the day from a financial settlement because of the domestic abuse, that would depend on how serious the domestic abuse is, because it's only in very serious cases that would have a bearing on the financial settlement.
Okay, all right, so it's an important one.
There's a question here I think you just may have missed, Siafra. It's from Rachel. Can a spouse make a future claim on an inheritance if the person hasn't died yet?
The answer to that is potentially, if the person who is potentially making the claim has a financial need that can only be met by recourse to the inheritance, then the inheritance can be claimed against in the financial settlement. Normally, inheritances are viewed as separate property, so non-matrimonial in nature. So you can only claim against matrimonial property, but if there isn't enough matrimonial property to meet financial need, then the inheritance will come into play.
Yeah, Rachel, I don't know if you feel brave enough and everything. Are you worried about are you inheriting something? Is there things also that a person can do to protect an inheritance? I'm not sure whether, Rachel, you're looking to claim or whether you're looking to protect an inheritance.
Probably protect in the future. I've got two very elderly parents, and I'm just increasingly aware of the fact that there may be some inheritance coming my way, and it's just like what to do about that in this situation.
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give is that if you are separated and you haven't resolved your financial claims upon divorce yet, it's important to do that as soon as possible, because if your parents are alive and elderly but still in good health, then the inheritance won't come into play. It's only when the inheritance is very, very imminent or has fallen in that it will be part of the financial settlement. So it's really important that if you might inherit in a few years' time, that you sort out your financial claims now, because if your parents are still alive and in good health, then the other person won't be able to claim against it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel, for the questions. It's great. And I think Millie also had a similar question about the inheritance. So on a similar vein, Grant, I don't know, I had a client again who has spouse was expecting a payout. They were looking to take early retirement and were looking for an additional payout that might kick in during the divorce process. So sort of similar, that the other partly is looking like they're going to achieve, have some sort of windfall in terms of lump sum. Would that be so when you're in the process? Yes, could that also be considered as well?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at financial claims, the first thing you do once you've done the financial disclosure is you classify which property is matrimonial and which is non-matrimonial. And inheritances or anything that's sort of separate businesses that the other spouse has nothing to do with, potentially are non-matrimonial, and so they can be ring-fenced in the settlement unless they are needed for to meet financial needs. Most cases that I deal with, all of the assets are relevant because they are needed to meet the financial needs of both parties. So it really depends on how you classify the property to begin with and what the financial needs of the parties are.
Okay, so yeah, it depends a bit. So it's not I think that's always in the legal, as you said, you've got to go down to principles maybe and sort of understand where these things were and how they were being used and everything. So I suppose that's why the importance of taking legal advice in this sort of situation, either to protect this as an asset if you're owning that asset, or again, if you're looking to make a claim, to really understand the legal situation and so that you can make a good case for that claim as well.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really important is actually being clear about what your financial needs are. And that's why I think you and I have talked about the importance of getting financial advice from you, at an early stage, because it may be that you do have financial needs that you're not aware of. And then once you get financial advice from a financial advisor, then you can formulate your needs case, and then you then may have a claim against an inheritance or a business, etc. But if you don't know what your needs are to begin with, then you may be missing out there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We've got some more sort of very challenging ones here around either domestic abuse again, but also again, so some thoughts about how to navigate a dissolution with someone who continues to try to exert control, e.g. by changing financial agreements during the process. So obviously, unfortunately, so we've got Janet, so thank you very much for that question. So obviously when you're dealing with somebody who's not, is really, as I said, is not a very nice person, but really pretty much.
No, and I've got lots of cases involving people on the other side who aren't very nice, and it is a challenge, and you have to navigate through that process. And I think the best advice I can give is that you need good advisors on your team. I've done this job for over 25 years. I'm used to dealing with difficult husbands who either don't want to give disclosure or who are acting in an abusive way. And you just have to manage that process carefully, get good advice, make sure that you have good support networks around you. You have to sort of, it is a bumpy road to get from, leaving a marriage to navigating your financial claims when you've got someone on the other side who is, not a very nice person. It's not easy. You've just got to get good advice, and you've got to trust in your advisor, be comfortable in your solicitor as well. Really important that whoever is helping you along the way, you feel comfortable with them. And you have to work together and deal with that other person, and you normally can get to the end and achieve a financial settlement. And most people, what they want to do is they want to get to the end, achieve a fair financial settlement, and then achieve a separation from that person, so that they have to have as little as possible to do with them. Good advice can get you there in the end, but it's a bumpy road for sure.
So Grant, can you talk about if there's any grants or anything available for people? So I had a client more recently who was talking about that their spouse had left the house and then decided to cut all off finances, decided that they didn't have to pay any of the bills, the electricity bills, and the next, they got kids in the house, and they basically didn't have the finances. So obviously we're in the process. What sort of financial support is available that you're aware of that people can tap into to sort of at least get them through that process until the actual, final orders are in place?
Yeah, so quite often that situation you come across where the husband is a high earner, or has all of the the money in his bank accounts. The wife and the children are in financial difficulty. So the first thing you would do, or I would do, is give my client some options in relation to what's called an application for maintenance pending suit, which is where you apply to the court for interim financial support. That can also involve the court ordering that the other person pay my client's legal costs. And so that's an option. Obviously, in relation to legal fees, some people are entitled to legal aid, but obviously that depends on whether there's domestic abuse in the case, and also there are financial considerations as well. If there's a lot of equity in the family home and the property is in joint names, then people can be ineligible for legal aid. So we can give people advice in relation to the option of a litigation loan. There are third-party providers that will lend money for legal costs and indeed for living expenses, with those costs being paid back from the financial settlement. So that's another option. So there are different options available when someone is in that situation.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm just noticing the time, so if anybody needs to drop, please do. As I said, myself and Grant, we will just continue to do a couple more questions for everybody, because I can see there's a lot of questions still coming up. So we'll keep going for a bit and everything. So, but if you do need to drop, obviously that's absolutely fine. And thank you very much for joining us. And you can get a recording if you're still interested to see more of these questions. So I've got a good question, everything about prenups. So just kind of wondering and everything is how useful are prenups is today? Are they effective? So that's a good question that's coming from Jessica. Can you give us your thoughts on those, Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Good question. So prenuptial agreements are not binding in England and Wales. So what I mean by that is if you enter into one and then you subsequently get a divorce, the court can go behind them if it is required to meet financial needs. But by saying that, they are a very good idea in a lot of cases, because what they do is they record the party's intention at the time of entering into them in relation to what they want to happen in the event that there is a divorce. They're also very good because they record the contributions that each make to the marriage. So when you make a prenuptial agreement, it will say, I've come to the marriage with this property and this pension and so on. It's a really good record of what each comes to the marriage with, because quite often when you go through the divorce sometime later, there is a dispute about who had what when the marriage was entered into. So and also if there are no children and if it's not a needs case, then the court will follow the prenuptial. They'll say, well, there's no need to depart from it, so we're going to follow what the document says. So in a lot of cases they're a really good idea, but they won't bind the court in some situations, especially where there are children or the financial needs of one party means that the court needs to go behind the prenuptial. But in most cases, they're a really good thing to do, especially in cases of second marriages or where one party has a lot of wealth and they're bringing those into the marriage.
Great. Thanks very much. That's a great answer. Thanks very much, Grant. A quick question here I can see from Dimples, maybe it was one I'll take, is should I wait until I get divorced to buy property? So I would say yes. So unfortunately, we do see quite a few clients who buy property too soon, and then maybe again, as I mentioned that earlier, that it's really important that you don't have all of your assets locked up, which is a liquid in the property. And so unfortunately, I have seen clients who've come to us a little bit too late. They've gone and made the decision to buy property, and then when we started doing the plan, we realised that they're going to have to move. So I would say before you make any of those major decisions, try and take financial advice if you can certainly afford it. So I think it would be well worth doing that. Again, this is one of these ones we don't want you making decisions that you're going to have to undo again when you realise you can't sort of afford it later on. So that would be for me. Alison, we've got a great question here from you. So Alison was married for, she's put 330 years. I think there might be a typo there. She's both retired. She's older than her husband. Can she take into account that she's going to live longer in terms of the financial settlement, which is actually very true for most women, obviously live longer than their husbands. And so often maybe we'll have longer care needs and things like that. So is that something that the courts generally take into consideration?
Yeah. So Alison, thanks for the question. Does it feel like you were married for 333 years or is it? Yeah. So the age of the parties is one of the Section 25 factors that's really important, because obviously if there is a difference in ages between the parties, it will feed into financial needs. So if you're older than your husband or younger than your husband, then depending on which way around it is, it will have a bearing on normally pension claims. So yes, very important factor. So if there is an age difference, it will have a bearing. But without knowing the specifics of your case, I can't give you any sort of more advice than that.
Okay, thanks. Great question. Thanks, Alison. So I've got a question here from Dominique. Come on, Dominique, if you'd like to, we'd love to hear you. So she's asking how it works if you're a self-employed husband and finance is controlled by them, and what are their rights from that perspective?
Yeah, so self-employed husbands
So it sounds like she's working for her self-employed husband, and the finances
Oh.
are control about them.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're working for your self-employed husband, then yeah. So I'm sorry, I probably need a little bit more information in relation to what the question is.
Or Dominique, do you want to come out and just give us a bit more information?
Don't worry if you're not
Okay.
comfortable.
All right. Well,
Dominic.
I think Millie's got her hand up. Millie, do you want to come off? And as I said, if Dominique wants to come back, we can always come back to Dominique.
Thank you. I've got just two follow-up questions. One, I've put it on the chat anyway, but about buying property. So, in my situation, the marital home is sold, and the finances, the proceeds of the sale have been divided equally. If we are now looking to buy our respective homes, is that something that can be done without the financial order in place, or one would advise to wait for that?
I would always say you should wait. You should agree something that's binding before you then start buying properties.
Okay. Because if the other party was going to make a claim to me, I could do the likewise to the same. It's like tit for tat, surely, isn't it?
It is. It's just.
So where's the harm in going ahead? If
The
risk, should we say? I know.
Well, I suppose there's no harm if you both buy your own properties and there is no dispute between the two of you in relation to financial claims. It's not a problem, but it's where there then becomes a dispute arises. You already have divided your assets, and if those assets then need to be distributed in a different way, it's tied up in two properties.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean.
So that's where it can get a little tricky. I mean, in most, I think there are loads of people who don't actually resolve their financial claims upon divorce, pursuant to a court order. I think they just, they apply for divorce online, they get a divorce, they sell the family home, and they buy a property each, and there's never a problem. And then they live in those properties, and they might sell them and buy another property, and then they die, and it's our problem never arises. But where a problem does arise, because there is a dispute in relation to a financial claim, if properties have already been purchased, then that can be difficult to unravel.
Okay. Another follow-up question from Alison about so I'm 5 years younger than my husband, but I've paid into a pension pot longer, and mine is a final salary, a combination of final salary and earnings, whereas his is not. And from what I understand from the financial planning that we've done before of a split, I think my pension is definitely more worthy than his, despite my age, and therefore less years of contribution. So how does one resolve that? Because I didn't really realize that, because I'm a medic. At the end of the day, we can die anytime, regardless of sex. I appreciate there's statistics out there, but my longevity is going to be affected by my habits, such as smoking and drinking, and so I could, for example, be a chimney smoker and younger, and die sooner than somebody who's older. So I was just trying to work out. I was interested because I didn't think that the age actually made a massive claim. Well, obviously substantial, 20 years, but a few years I didn't think would make a massive claim on the settlement. So I was interested a bit more about that, really.
I think so. Again, without knowing all about your situation, it's difficult to advise in any more than general terms. But where there are different pensions, normally there would be a pension report from an actuary, and they do look at life expectancy factors, because obviously if you are dividing the pensions to achieve equality of income at retirement age, if the wife in your case is younger, then you're going to need more pension provision, because you've got a greater life expectancy, and if you're younger, then that will also impact. So that will mean that you may need more pension provision than your husband. So that will impact. And if your pension is a final salary scheme and his is a money purchase, then again, that needs to be taken into account when you're looking at a pension sharing, which is why you need a report from an actuary.
Last question. Do things like habits such as smoking, drinking affect that pension report?
Sometimes, yeah, when you instruct a pension expert, they will ask whether there are any health factors that are relevant, and if one person is not in good health because they've smoked for 30 years, then you sometimes see that referred to in the letter of instruction.
Okay. Thanks very much, Millie. Look, I think we've kind of run over a bit on time. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but they are all really, really good questions. I thank you so much for all of the contributions today. So thank you very much for joining Grant and myself, and we hope you found the session useful. Please give us some feedback if you did, because we were potentially considering running another panel on this next year. So if this is one that's interesting to you, we'll certainly run something similar. Just to remind everyone that if you're interested in joining Women's Wealth, you can join that free by signing up for our Enable membership, which gives you access to events like this, but also courses on things like how to invest and other resources to help you manage your money. So just to let you know, and everything is, Grant can be reached. Carolyn's going to put a free resource in the chat for you all as a takeaway on about divorce. But Grant can be reached, his contact details there, and his email is gparker@mayowynnebaxter.co.uk. His phone number is also in the information that we're going to send to you, and anyone who's registered today also will send a link as well for you. Just to let you know, Women's Wealth, we're authorised and regulated independent areas, and for those that need more one-to-one service, then you can always upgrade your membership to suit whatever your needs are. So we'll be doing our next Finance on Friday. We always do it the last Friday of every month. It's always at 12 p.m. The next one is on another really important topic, which is around economic abuse. So please get the word out to friends and family if you feel anyone that might be relevant for this. It's important, again, as we all have sort of older parents and things like that can be, or again, even sometimes have friends that we know have been unfortunately subject to this sort of thing. So it's a really important topic. So please come and join us for that one. But otherwise, thank you so much again for all the contributions today. I'm sorry didn't get to all of the questions. And as I said, we'll take the feedback. And as I said, this one looks like it was a good one. So we might do something like this again next year. So watch this space on that. So anyway, but have a lovely weekend, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.